Good afternoon, this is Arthur K. Johnson. I'm going to be your tour guide for this tour of the museum today. And I want to mention that I've been with the museum now for 18 years. It's a hobby of mine and I enjoy it for every time I get to come in here and conduct another tour. And I've enjoyed my working here. I'm going to start you out on the tour by telling you a little bit about our early days. The Griggs County Museum began with its first building in 1970, only 36 years ago. They built one building, and that's to the far end here, and that open door down there by the speaker stand. And then in 1978, a second building was added, and that's through the wide doors here to my left. And then in the fall of 1995, we poured the cement floor for an addition to the two buildings that would cover those two buildings up. That was put down. We hired carpenters for a few days to put up the framework of this new building, which we call our Recognition Center. And after that, it became the work of volunteers. We worked throughout the winter, as you can see from these pictures. And the snow got deeper, but workmen continued. We got doors in, we put the siding on, and come June, we had the dedication of the museum, the Recognition Center of part of the museum. You can see the flags in front, the crowd that's there, people coming for the open house of the new Recognition Center as a part of our museum. Now, in this Recognition Center, to cover up those two buildings, we had to widen this building out to 110 feet from that south wall to the wall in here. It's 110 feet, and we're 26 feet wide. We would have liked to have gone a little wider, but we're getting so close to the street, and we had to listen to the city council tell us we had to back off 10 feet. So we have only 26 feet in width. But this is our Recognition Center, and I invite you now to come with me, and we're going to go into the Veterans Center. Here's a portion of our Recognition Center that we turned over to the VFW and American Legion Post in the county, and asked them to come in here and help us design a Veterans Center. And I would like to show you at this time this center. Okay, these pictures were the first part of the new Veterans Center. The veterans organizations hired a local gal who's an artist to paint these pictures for them. She chose her topic, and the topic was involvement of the Griggs County people in some of the skirmishes or wars that we've been engaged in. The first one is when the pioneers were coming into the county. The highest hill in Griggs County is called Butte Michoud, about 13 miles north of Cooperstown. The Indians used to have their tents up on this hill, then they could see for miles around if there was anyone else in the area. But now come the pioneers, and so came the cavalry. Men on horseback to see that there were no confrontations between the Indians and the pioneers that were coming through. And his scout is there getting information from him, and he's going to go out and check as to the whereabouts of the Indian people. But here come the pioneers in their covered wagons, and what a beautiful job this local gal did with the painting of the horses, how real they look. I tell people that if I were to draw a horse like that, at best it would be a stick horse. Okay, in the second picture, she is from World War I, our involvement of troops in the World War. She could have drawn battle scenes, such as frontline scenes or skirmishes or riflemen or whatever, but she chose to put in a farm scene to show that the men went into service, the women went into the fields. Now that he's home, coming home either furlough or discharged. His little boy is coming out to meet him. His parents are there helping with the chores, and so they're coming out to greet him as well. But in each of these pictures from here on out, she's placed a church, one of the churches from the rural Griggs County, and in that churchyard she's put 17 crosses. 17 crosses to represent the number of men lost in battle in World War I from our county. Those 17 men are pictured across the top, 16 across the top, and the 17th one right here. So there are 17 up there. You'll note that there are 3 that we do not have pictures of. Those are young men that came out here to work on the Bonanza farm that was covered most of this area here from other states or wherever they came from. They came alone. We've never known their families. Now that we were looking for pictures, we were unable to get them because we don't know the families, but we're continuing to work on the internet and so on to try to find family members that probably could supply us with pictures for that. So that's picture number 2. Picture number 3 went to World War II. A group of recruits that are going by bus to Fargo. Some may go by train, so it's showing both the bus and the train. And again, there's a church in the background, the Lutheran church here in Cooperstown, before it became the new brick structure that it is today. In this graveyard, there are 28 crosses representing 28 men that lost their lives in World War II, all from our county. All of these men are pictured here through the middle, the bottom, and the top row there on that side. And 28 men lost their lives from our county at that time. Then we go to the Korean War, and we go back to this corner over here, the lower group of pictures. Again, for local interests, she has put in the first gas station in Cooperstown, first gas station in Hannaford, and the gas station at Binford, the 3 largest towns in the county, each with something that local people recognize. And then put in people that we would also recognize. The 4 boys in uniform there in the lower part of the picture are 4 boys from the Cooperstown area that were gathered together over in Korea and had their pictures taken over there. There's one thing, the 2 little boys in the bottom, one in the wagon and his little playmate down there. 20 years later, the boy in the wagon playing there in Binford is represented home on furlough over here in his friend, and with the rifle and with the shells around his neck. And a few weeks later, he's represented by the cross in the cemetery there. He was killed in action. But again, here's local pictures to create interest for local people. The school at Cooperstown, the school at Hannaford, the school at Binford, our 3 largest towns. High school graduates, a couple of local boys. The fellow in the dark uniform here is the husband of the gal that's the artist for these pictures here. And finally, the last picture, she was going to do something on the first time we were over in Iraq on Operation Desert Storm. So she started painting in a lot of gray sand, then she changed her mind and changed the colors slightly to represent a Memorial Day service where the local soldiers putting on their uniforms gathering around the flagpole, and then a parade of other veterans coming up the walkway. And I assume that the crowd of people were coming behind to gather around for Memorial Day service. So going back, we have 17 crosses in the first cemetery, 28 in the second, 1 in the third, 1 in the fourth. And so we've lost a total of 17 plus 28 plus 1 and plus 1 during our activity. So that represents what they wanted here and the veterans wanted here in their Veterans Center. put in the uniforms that you see at the bottom here, representing all branches of service. All of them are World War II vintage, except we have a U.S. Navy uniform from World War I and a U.S. Army uniform from World War I. Otherwise, they're all newer. 4 branches of women's service are represented there. The roster of those that have served are on this wall over here. There are approximately about 1,700 names up there now. And for each of these, we've made contact with themselves or their families, gotten their branch of service they were in, their rank, the dates they served, and the theater they served. We've got that much information on each one of these. These names on the board, these boards in the background here that appear black are metal. So we can, each one of these names here has we can pull them right off because they have a magnet on the back side, put them back again. Because we are constantly adding new names, and each time we add a new name, we sometimes strip the whole board, re-alphabetize them, and put them back up again. And it's easily done. These are in alphabetical order from beginning, where from the Civil War up to the present time. We have a few from the Civil War because when this area was settled, some of the people that moved in from other parts of the country had served in the Civil War, and so and made their homes in Cooperstown. Some of those are also listed here. There's 4 or 5. But up to the present time. We don't have all of the names because some they haven't contacted us, or we have been unable to contact them. But gradually there's more and more names coming in, and so we add from time to time. We don't have a lot of space left, but maybe enough for another 100, 150 names we can put on these boards, and then we're going to have to look for another wall from there on for the addition of more. But these are the Griggs County veterans from the beginning up to the present time. We've also, after we started with the names, somebody decided it would be nice to have pictures of them. So we recontacted these people, and they began sending us pictures and the information that we wanted. So we have their pictures in various books, like in World War II. This book has all those alphabetized from A through I, from J through O, and from P through Z. And it's fun to look in these books and see the pictures when they were young and when they were in service, and compare them to what we see on the streets today, these people that we know today. So that's a nice feature, and people like to come in here and look at these pictures. This cabinet here represents memorabilia brought back by soldiers from World War I. Everything from ammunition to grenades to knives to mess gear to clothing to sea rations. In fact, when we showed our veterans here about 3 years ago, after we'd finished this part of it, we brought them in on one day with them and their families, and we took them in here about 20 at a time and explained what we had done and asked them if they had any questions and so on. One of the questions one of them asked was, do you suppose those sea rations from World War I are still good? And another fellow raised his voice right away and he said, they never were, how can they be any good today? And that kind of answered that question, so I didn't have to say any more. On the other side of the door here, there's a cabinet that represents World War II and later. We don't have the ammunition, we don't have the same things that we have in the cabinet over here for World War I, because the government cracked down on what you could bring back with you. They allowed no ammunition, no guns, no bayonets or anything like that brought back. So what we have is mostly clothing, insignia that they wore, and a few pictures and things like that. Here are skis here that were issued to a resident of this county when he took his basic training in the ski troops at Colorado Springs, Colorado. He then was sent over to Italy, for the mountains in Italy, where he fought during the World War II, spent the entire time in the mountains. And he was able to bring these skis home, and he donated them to the museum. Down here, this cabinet has pictures of the only nurse, registered nurse, to be in World War I. And she served in France on the front lines with the troops and attended to their injuries and was commended for outstanding and meritorious service with her work there. That pretty much covers what we have here in the Veterans Room. We do get a lot of visitors here from the veterans organizations. The state commander of the American Legion, VFW posts, have been here. They've even brought in some national people that have been visiting North Dakota with the veterans groups, because they think this is one of the most outstanding displays in the state as far as a veterans center. Most counties maybe have a roster on the wall of the downtown on a billboard or in a post or in the courthouse or something like that. But here they've not only the pictures, but the pictures that we saw on the wall over here, but the pictures of those that lost their lives, the names of the veterans that have served, and then the scrapbooks are showing their pictures, and then the memorabilia that has come back from these wars. Another thing that we have started here in our recognition center is to represent business places that have been in business early on, from way back in time up to the present. So far we have only one business that has responded, and that's the bridge building company that was organized here in Cooperstown and in Griggs County way back in 1911. When that bridge building company began, because the county was now organized, we had to have roads. That meant we had to cross rivers, creeks, streams, ravines, and for that, the Swingin' Construction Company was organized here in Cooperstown, hiring Griggs County people. You see that many of the things that transported their equipment was on wagon or old appearing trucks. But the bridges in the county were all built by that bridge building company. They began to expand and have moved away as far as Valley City and other places to build bridges. The bridge that we see right up here in the background is built across the river in Valley City, 3 blocks east of the college. So when you came in from the south, you came down the hill and crossed this bridge to get uptown. About, 10 years ago perhaps now, that bridge had to be replaced because of ice jams, floods, and so on. It was damaged. And so the same company, now located in Grand Forks, they moved from Cooperstown after starting here in 1911, but in 1948, they moved to Grand Forks. And so the same company got hired to rebuild this bridge. A couple of the light posts off that bridge are part of their display here. They had built the light posts in the first place. And incidentally, those light posts in the first place had gas lanterns on them and not electric lights, but later on they were electrified. So there's a new bridge in Valley City today without these light posts, but a couple of the light posts are here. They put a replica, or what appears to be a river, flowing under this little bridge here in the middle, green grass on the sides. They brought the artist down from the Grand Forks Herald because that's where their business is located today. This fellow over here is trawling cement. The fellow on this side is checking to see if the forms are level. And looking at his level there, we see the bubble is right in the middle, meaning that is level. And then he went up and he literally freehand did the lettering up above here. And down below the forms, they had wooden forms to begin with that they tightened up with a wrench. Those they tapped into place with a hammer. Those that they snapped in place. And today they're using metal forms. On the bridge here are many replicas of their business. including a helmet that got smashed. Well, we don't know whether it was injurious to the fellow that was wearing it, or if something fell on it when it was just laying there or what, we don't know. But this is a nice display of what their business from the time they started here in Cooperstown and what they're still doing today. Note on the right-hand side over there, the big bypasses they're building over these interstate highways and so on. And and down in the corner, the fellow with the red shirt, Willie Harder, a local fellow who was a foreman for Swing Bridge Building Company for many years. Back about 6 years ago or so, I'm not sure just exactly what time it was, but I think it's about 6 years ago, this animal's skeleton was recovered from the Cheyenne Valley about 6 miles southeast of Cooperstown, 6-7 miles out there. And we had a couple of local fellows that often made a trip to the river after a rainstorm and tried to find arrowheads and things like that, and pieces of animal bone or whatever they could find that are washed out into the open after the rainstorm. And then they discovered the nose of this animal sticking out of the shale, which was the type of soil that we have down there by the river, that shale. And when they realized that there were teeth connected to it, they stopped and immediately called the State Historical Society, and they sent a paleontologist out, and he looked it over and said, yes, you have discovered a mosasaur, an animal that turned out to be 22.5 feet long. There was a skeleton of the whole thing there as they uncovered it from this shale. It was not hard to dig through the shale to get at it. They began by taking the head and shoulders of the mosasaur and digging around it. As you see the fellow digging over there, digging around the head of the mosasaur. They wrapped it in burlap and then soaked it in plaster of Paris. And when that hardened, they used a tractor and lifted the whole thing out of the ground, put it on a truck and took it out to Bismarck, the State Historical Society building in Bismarck, State Museum. And there, along with the rest of the body, which would be mostly vertebrae, ribs, and the fins, and it's in Bismarck today. What we have here is just a plaster model that they made for us to put here in our museum. A plaster rib that was the exact size and a duplicate of what they have out there. And they also made a vertebrae that they included with this. These are in Bismarck today for those that want to go out to the State Museum and see the whole animal put back together again. And that came from Griggs County here, one of the most complete of all skeletons they have found, because all bone parts were there. But it was interesting to watch them work, because there were a number of cracks in the bones, and as they went along and dug it up, they had a bottle of glue and they filled all these cracks with glue to keep it from falling apart. They also were very careful taking it out so that it would, as much of it would come at one time as possible. But 22.5 feet long. And about 3 years ago now, they also uncovered a second skeleton out in that area, and that was of an ocean turtle. And that turtle measured 8 or 9 feet across the shell, so it's huge. And that's in Bismarck as well. We don't have anything other than a picture of it perhaps here at the museum. People ask, how can an animal like this, that's an ocean animal, be here in North Dakota that's dry and no large bodies of water? But at one time, if we look at a map such as we have back here, this ocean was open through the Gulf of Mexico up through central United States, covering most or all of North Dakota, all the way up to the Gulf of, well, from the Gulf of Mexico there up to the North Pole and up to the area known as the Hudson Bay area. And so they just swam right through here. And when the water receded, they were trapped here. Eastern North Dakota, when I had geography, said that one time we were covered by Lake Agassiz, the eastern half of North Dakota. So that's as the water receded into a lake, and then it receded further into rivers. All we have left is the Red River, the Cheyenne River, the Maple River, the James River, and maybe part of the Missouri River. From that was once a big body of land. So these animals got trapped, and that's where we're finding skeletons today. These are pictures of each of the towns in Griggs County. We're a small county. There are 3 of the larger towns that have already been represented in the Veterans Room, but there are other towns here as well. We tried to get the oldest picture we could of the town. And you'll notice in many of these pictures that the buildings are wooden. They're don't look like modern buildings at all. Here's probably one of the smaller towns in the county that's non-existent today, that was spread out like that. Biggest picture of all, but not much there. And others are all the way around here. Cooperstown. This house that you see in the Cooperstown picture is the house right north of the courthouse uptown. And it was the home of R.C. Cooper. R.C. Cooper's picture is over on this side above the piano. And R.C. Cooper was the bonanza farmer of this area, owning most of the land all around, on all sides of Cooperstown, all the way around here. R.C. Cooper hired men by the dozens. For instance, he'd go out plowing in the morning. The story is told. He'd go and start out in the morning up here by the courthouse, and he'd tell the men, today